Hello, YouTube. Someone asked for a video walking through some knife pictures. These are the ones that I have up on Klein Knives catalog. There's a secondary page that I just threw just knives on. I didn't update it all the time and I didn't put them all on there, but you'll see there's a good selection. So, first off, this is one of the first things I made when I got back into knife making again this time. There was a stint after college where I didn't make knives, but in high school and early college, I made knives. And then a few years ago, I lost a job and started making knives again. And that's what this run is from. And this was the first one of those. And this was one I just made playing around. It's a little sheep's foot thing, kind of just experimenting. Then I made this as my own little pocket knife. Still have this one. I carved the logo on it. I did those logos with a Dremel tool, and my plan is to do other ways in the future, but I kind of like carving them with a Dremel tool. It gives it a unique look. I made this for my buddy Sam. It's a cool knife. Very early of my stuff. I made this one for another friend of mine. He wanted I think he said he wanted a Loveless style. So it was a Loveless style drop point. Nothing at all like what I would make, but I made him one. Matt actually has this now. He took it home from Tulsa. I guess it's my gift to him. You know, uh, I still think it's funny he ended up with that. He should have ended up with it. It's a cool zombie weapon, and he's a cool zombie slayer. So, alternate view, because apparently I thought this needed its own post. Uh, I sold this one to someone on here. Little pocket rig, little tiny thing. I thought it was kind of cool. I made it out of scrap, just messing around, and I sold that thing for I think it was like $100. This one I still have. The sheath actually ended up going with another knife. It never really fit this knife very well, and it was early on, and you'll see. Second, I have to cough. Where's the tab? Look, this gets hard. I hope that muted on the whole thing. I don't know. We'll see how this works. Uh, G Webs has this knife with a little sheath thing I made for it. It's pretty bitchin'. He wanted a tiny knife. I made him a tiny little Tonto. I made this one also just playing around. This was the thing I made figuring out how I was going to make a Tonto because I wanted to know how to make one. And then this was it, but bigger. And this was the first thing I ever put a real handle on. And mistakes were made. It got kind of skinny. And I do all my Tantos one sided. And part of that's because it makes it easier. Part of that's because I think it's cooler. Part of it's because that's the way my mentor made them. And I liked his reasoning behind making them that way. I sold this one also. I believe that sold for $175. This sold also for $150. And actually, I took an order for another one of those that I still need to fucking refund and shit. And I need to get on that. My life kind of fell apart in between that and then and now. This thing I still have. I made it just playing around. It gets kind of cool and different. This is the knife that ended up getting that sheath from the other knife. It fit this knife perfectly. This one I still have. I'm thinking about making a carry rig for this eventually to give to my nephew. That's sculpted sculpted paper micarta. That's black paper micarta, and I did that with a spindle sander. It's pretty easy to do if you've never played with that at all. Take a piece of material on a spindle sander and do what you think would make this, and play around with it. You'll get there in 15 or 20 minutes. This was like my exercise in ultimate checkering or whatever with that. I went crazy on this thing. I sold this too. I think I got 175 for it also. And I gave this to a buddy of mine. The handle on this is the type of handle that I like to do on knives now. This is a paracord handle, but it's been impregnated with epoxy, so it doesn't move anymore. That's just how it is. It's like a plastic handle, but it has that cord wrapped look, so it looks Japanese, kind of like a katana. I just think this is a badass look for a fucking knife. Especially this one's like a cat's claw kind of thing. I don't know exactly what I was thinking. I was just playing around. I like to play and see what happens. And I made this for Matt. This is his Batarang. Really, I think it's pretty good for just coming out of a garage. And I did that in about like an hour. This knife has since been sharpened. It's the one I have up on the shelf over there I showed in a video the other day. It's the same style handle. This thing, I've still got some place for the guy that has it, but he never claimed it. I can't get in touch with him. I don't know where he is. So I still have that. And let's go back and talk about that one. So the handle material on this I got out of a pile of firewood. It's Osage orange, just a really nice piece of it. The chunk of fucking what is that called? I just completely have that word knot. The knot in the wood makes it pretty like that. I think it came out pretty dope. The blade is 5160, and it's not Damascus. That's just a oxide finish that I did in the forge. So that is really cool looking rust that's on there. I think it's a better way to go. This protects the knife and is free. Damascus weakens the knife blade and is expensive. To each their own. My leather sheaths are, amateur. And like, I pretty much concluded that I am a knife maker, not a sheath maker. I've learned how to make some sheaths. I can make functional sheaths. I don't make great sheaths. So I'm going to contract out and have a bunch of sheaths like this one kind of made, pouches out of leather. And that's what I'm going to give as sheaths for my knives. I tried Kydex. I don't really like Kydex because it tears up the knives. And you'll see, I have some knives here that I have Kydex for. This is the next knife. I made this one in a fit of rage after my mentor died. This is one of the nicest things I ever made. If you want to hear more about it and you want to see this one sharpened, go check out my top 3 knives video I did the other day. These are cool. I made these for my mother. They're dragonflies. That's how they started out there in the form, and then I hammered them into the dragonfly shape. I think it's cool to see the before and after. I like blacksmithing stuff because you get to see, transformation, change. And I dig that, obviously, because the trans thing, but just in general, like, it's cool to make things and to be able to envision that you can make a dragonfly shape out of this shape of metal by forging it. I love it. And then there's this thing. I made this out of a farrier's rasp. Has a nice, comfortable handle on it. Not everything I do is one-sided grinding, but on that one it was because that file sucked to grind. This was a knife somebody wanted and ordered, and I kind of hate the way it turned out. I'd rather not talk about that one. It was meant to be a butcher knife from like the 1800s mixed with like a Bowie knife. This knife I made for a competition for the Ameribraid contest. They gave me a knife blade blank. That was cut in this shape that you see here, basically. And the contest was to make a dagger. So this one I put a lot of effort and thought into. And the handle is elderberry, I believe, stabilized elderberry, dyed blue with orange liners, nickel silver pins with a hollow third pin. The blade is 1095, as you can see marked there. I did that with a Dremel tool before heat treat, so it would be blackened. And then I hand sanded and polished this whole blade. It's very pretty, and it took a long time, and it's gorgeous. And I made this in the style of a mix of knives that I like. And to me, a dagger does not need to be double-edged. They didn't specify that it had to be double-edged, and I made this thing as mostly a fuck you to their dagger contest. Like, they didn't specify any of this in the rules, so I made a knife in the style that I make knives that is a stabbing weapon with the piece of steel that they gave me. And there's more pictures of this on my actual Instagram. We'll do a walkthrough of my actual Instagram someday, but like that's going to be a long thing. I don't know who really wants to see that. This thing is going to be long enough, and this is a short one. Uh, I love this knife, and the inspiration on this was the handle was a Randall Type 14, which I love the handle of. And the blade, I wanted a Scottish dirk. And I did a false edge. Where is it? Let's try this way. You can see it there. I did a false edge on the top there, just so there was no doubt about whether or not I could fucking make clean grind lines and shit. Because I can. This is just the style of stuff that I made. And I made this knife in the style of my mentor, which means that it is it's only ground on one side. What's that called? It's a chisel ground knife. And especially in a stabbing weapon like this, I did a very steep chisel ground. This is going to stab like a motherfucker. It's not a slicer at all. It doesn't slice well. It's not a good knife. It is a dagger. And if you use it, it is clearly a dagger. Which I think is bitchin', to be honest. And see, they're also engraved when I did this type of steel Klein and 19 for the year I made the knife. And since this is, I made this as a modern tactical Scottish dirk thing. And fitting that, I gave it a sheath with a pouch on the front so you could put stuff in it, whatever you want to put in there. And you can pull that off too. I think there's pictures on here somewhere of the sheath without it. So you can pull that off and use the sheath without that if you want. This is, if I'm gonna make high end shit, this is what I'm gonna make. And I kind of wish I had this one still. It's a very pretty knife, and its owner paid $250 for that one. I didn't say this. This was also $250. This was $200 if I remember right. But I made it for myself and sold it, and sometimes I'll do that and sell stuff cheaper. I would have said $250 if somebody asked me to make that. That's just kind of the nature of the business. Uh, this thing, I made several, and I was playing around with some scrap. They're bandsaw blades. A friend of mine gave me. I made this as like an Indian scalping knife kind of thing, playing around with some walnut in one of these and seeing about doing a rat tail tang. It made a cool knife. I still have this one. Nunchucks. E Honda has the short black ones. These long ones, I actually took 6 inches off each of these. I made them super long because I wasn't sure how long nunchucks were supposed to be. And my 18-inch ones, man, they would fuck shit up. But they were kind of hard to conceal, and you hit yourself with them. So I shortened them to a foot, and as it turns out, that's actually about the length nunchucks are. I made these because Arizona re-legalized nunchucks, and I think that's a win for self-defense. Fine Ape has this one. This was my attempt at a knife from The Hunted. He makes a knife by the river, and he does it with very few tools and whatever. And I did this thing with nothing but a hard surface to strike on, a pair of tongs, and a hammer. And then the sharpening of it is actually with a big chunk of fucking sandstone. So it was forged all the way to shape, basically, and then ground by hand. I think that's pretty dope. And it went with this thing to Fine Ape. This was $350, and I probably sold it too cheap. The sword rig had more to it than this. I added a pouch on the front of this sheath with a strap to carry it by, and it was like a short sword cutlass kind of thing. It's badass. Fine Ape should do a video on that or something, show it off. This is one of the greatest things I ever made. The handle on this is also epoxy paracord, and it's just bulletproof. It's a tank, and the guard being twisted out of the tang of the knife. This is a style of sword called a dusik that was popular in the 1400s and 1500s in Central Europe. Mainly, it was popular with the peasants that were revolting and shit like that. And there were some peasant armies, and they made these things. And it's like an orc sword. I saw it and went, well, shit, a modern shortened version of that would be cool. And for the blade on it, I made a parang. A parang is a pretty useful jungle tool from the Philippines. I made my version of a parang with a knuckle duster and fused it with a dusik. And I think this is very fucking cool. The engraving on the sword, you may notice, I took the engraving of what was supposed to be said on Conan's father's sword and translated it into Old Norse English letters. So not Norse runes, but the English letter version of Old Norse, and wrote it on there. And then there's a Wheel of Pain and a little Thulsa Doom standard engraved on it too. Oh shit. So there's the Thulsa Doom standard there at the bottom of that side. And then there's the Wheel of Pain on that side. So I love Conan, and I wanted to make a sword, and I figured this might be the only sword I ever make, so I was going to engrave some Conan shit on it. So these two, the black one here, I gave to Matt. I think he was going to do a review video on it, but I have yet to see a review video on that. Let's see. Review my knife, Matt. The green one I sold for $350. I think I sold it too cheap too. That was a personal that I made for myself that I let go. Most of the ones that I really like, I make a knife for myself and then I sell it. I played with this to experiment on making a karambit. It's like George Washington's karambit or some shit. I don't know. It was the closest I can come to making one. It's not my style of knife. I gave this to E Honda because I want him to spin it on his finger, and eventually he'll hurt himself because that thing's like a scalpel. So, you know, this thing I made. Well, it started out as a much bigger knife with 4 grooves on the handle. The blade kept getting tinier and tinier and tinier. It ended up this tiny. So then I shaped it like a buck 110 blade because I always liked that knife. And I figured this thing was going to be a pocket knife now because it was so small. I cut one of the fingers off and I put walnut scales with brass pins on it so it matches the kind of look of a buck 110. I thought this was a cool thing to do. It's pretty bitchin', I think. I still have that one as well. These two went to the same person. These are the sheaths for them that they ended up with. I'm not that great at making Kydex sheaths. This sheath ended up way better. I sold this thing for $300, and I sold it way too cheap. It has green liners on black paper micarta scales, 1095 blade. Beautiful. This one's at my grandmother's house. It's a kitchen knife I made. It's pretty sharp. I think that one's 01. Now here's that thing with the rig. I guess that was 150. There you go. I underestimated one of them. I still think that's a cool knife, even for 150. Well, anyway, that's all the knives I have on here. There's a few more that aren't on here. There's a whole bunch from high school and shit that aren't on here at all. Some of those are on the main Instagram page, as well as some of the other things that I made and forgot to put on here. I didn't update this very much. I would go through periods where I'd throw a bunch of stuff on here. Oh, let's mention this too. I made this for a friend of mine on Instagram, Clayton Ogre. He has a cool page. Let's go look at his real quick. Pimp him out. If you're on Instagram and want someone cool to follow, this dude is a friend of mine. He's in Missouri. He's really down to earth. He's a prepper. He has cool guns. He takes cool pictures. He followed my shit, and I taught him how to take really good pictures, I think, by the looks of this. He takes way better pictures than he used to. He's a cool guy. I sent him this for free because we were friends and whatever. Let's go back down here. And we had similarly sized hands. So his thing was he had always seen these kits and they are made for people that have tinier hands than him. You can only get 3 fingers in them. I made this to where it fit my hand and would fit in the Altoids 10. And it fit his hand perfectly. So he was happy. And this was a scrap of 01 and 20 minutes of my time. I made the char box, the Ranger bands to keep it shut, the char cloth, and I napped out this chunk of flint to put in there. This is a Burlington shirt from southern Missouri. So this was going home when I was shipping it. On a what's it called? Fire steel like this, you have to harden the piss out of it. So I water hardened this thing, and it's 01. You're not supposed to water harden 01, but it makes this thing spark like a motherfucker. I wouldn't hit it too hard with a hammer. There's a video on my other Instagram page that's at Peter6Nut of me testing out O1 that I did various things to. And the way I heat treat my knives made it strong as shit. But I tried doing this to section O1, and it just broke like glass when I hit it with a hammer and a vise. But for starting fires, it's great. The Ranger bands keep that whole kit shut and keep water out of the hole in it, because you need to punch a hole in that tin so you can actually make char cloth in it. I don't think you can see it there, but there's a hole in the top of that. If you want to know more about making knives or blacksmithing or any of that kind of shit, I'd look at Dave Canterbury's stuff. I like his stuff on blacksmithing. I'd watch Black Bear Forge. I'd watch Walter Sorrells. Cat. Let's see. I really like Jason Knight. Jason Knight Knives makes some cool videos on how to make stuff. He has a whole master class on how to make things if you really want to pay for it. And I'm not saying that that's not worth it or anything. It's totally worth it. But I like figuring stuff out for myself a little more than that. And maybe I'll take that class eventually, but I'm not there yet. I don't know if I ever will be, because for me, making knives is kind of a hobby, I guess, more or less. I thought it could be a business. I tried to make it a business, but in reality, I just don't like making knives for 8 to 12 hours a day, all day, every day for the rest of my life. And that's what it would have to be a successful business. So I got really, really good at this shit. And now I'm hoping to like keep doing it and perfect my art kind of, and auction off pieces on eBay. I figure as I make things from now on, after I get land and a cabin and whatever, I'm going to eventually start making knives again. And when I do, I'm going to make what I want to make, and I'm going to throw it up on eBay for a penny auction. And however much you guys want to pay for it, you can pay for it. And I will probably put rigs with them of some sort to carry them, sheaths and stuff, because I think knives should have sheaths for the most part. But I'm really going to try to find a leather worker that will sell me a gigantic box of sheaths for not much money. Because I've already been offered that a couple of times, and we just couldn't come to a decision on what a universal sheath would be. And as soon as I can figure that out, that would make it a lot easier to fulfill knife orders. But again, if I do an order in the future for like a custom job or something, it's going to be something odd. That's a fusion of stuff that I like, and it's going to be expensive. And that's half of the thing with this is like, I want to make some cool shit. I want to make some pieces of metal art and weapons that are, going to be in museums and shit someday. And like, maybe we'll get there eventually. For now, my short-term goal is to get the cabin and shit built back up and get a shop going and start making just the kind of knives that I like to make, which are probably going to be cord-wrapped, handled fucking knives and leather sheaths. That's one of those, like, if you like them, great. If you don't buy them. Like, I'm not going to count on my knives to fund this endeavor. I'm hoping Patreon and maybe some advertisers eventually. Like, if I can find advertisers for my show that makes sense to me, I'll do them. You're not going to see a Raid Shadow Legends ad on this channel ever. But like, if Buck wanted to run an ad in front of my shit, they're welcome to. I don't know how we would do that. I'd probably just read it. And I would try to make it fucking funny and entertaining. And I'd fuck it up every time. And like, in reality, that's way better than fucking having some pre-recorded bullshit that people skip through. I watched a channel called Lindy Beige, and he read his own ad the other day. And I was like, that's a great idea. Do it in one take, read it, fuck it up while you're doing it, and then just post it. Because, like, no one cares about the ad anyway. And if you make it good and entertaining, I'm more likely to listen to the damn ad. These are my thoughts on advertisements, and I think my show and art and everything here is going to be interesting. The other thing I'm wanting to do with eBay and Etsy, both, I don't know which one I'm going to do more of, is I'm going to do drawings and paintings and doodles and shit like that. And I'm trying to decide now if I just want to do that and put them in an envelope and do like a penny auction on eBay, or if I want to like frame them or some shit and sell them on Etsy for, $20, over whatever the frame cost. I don't know if people would be into that or not and how much art I'm really going to be doing, but I'm hoping to start oil painting eventually. That'll be interesting. And if I do oil painting on canvas, those are going to be a lot of time and effort and well done and are going to go for a lot of money probably. I figure we'll auction those off. Nice oil paintings can run quite a bit. My grandmother did oil painting, and I painted with her when I was a kid, but I haven't done it in years. And everything that I do with drawing, you can do with paint. And I want to make some cool art. A lot of people, I think, don't like my drawings and art and whatever, but like, I don't know, it's my style, and I'm developing it. And if you don't like it, don't watch, don't buy it, don't support it. If you do like it, do Patreon. I'm definitely gonna do like some artwork giveaways for Patreon and shit like that. I think that's the least I can do. I don't know what else I'm gonna do for Patreon. Patreon is this giant question mark to me of I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't really know how I'm going to do a frequently asked. Not frequently, a Q&A video. I need to set up something to do that. And if you give more than $5 a month, if you give $5 a month or more on Patreon, you'll be in for the Q&As. And right now, there's only 2 people that are in that, and I'm looking at just probably messaging them on Patreon and asking them, "Hey, submit 2 questions," because there's only 2 of you. And one of them's Matt. So, if that tells you anything about where Matt and I stand, he still supports me on Patreon. So, thanks for watching, and please subscribe and support the Patreon, and look forward to more podcasts. I don't know when the Red Dawn podcast is going to be back. We'll see. The Rachel's Place 26 podcast is going to be starting with Buck Angel as the first guest, and I'm hoping to get some gun channels on as a couple guests after that. I'm hoping Military Arms Channel will be one of them, and I would really like Never Enough Ammo to do one of those too, but I don't know if we can line that up or not. We'll have to see. Other than that, I think Forgotten Weapons would be cool, but basically everyone that I'm talking about doing a podcast with is someone that you would have heard of. And I think that's kind of cool. I want to be like the late night talk show of the fucking gun and knife outdoor world. I think Joe Rogan, but poor and with better guns. I'll see you guys later.